Hello, good evening, happy Tuesday night. I'm Allison, and behind the camera making all the magic happen is producer Ken, and we are from Gotham Quilts, and we're coming to you live with Gotham Quilts. We're not quite live tonight, but I hope that doesn't deter you. We still have a fabulous show filled with all kinds of information. We've got a fabulous new fabric line. We've got a great project to go along with it. And I hope that after you watch this program, you curves won't be so scary. I know a lot of people shy away from curves, but I'm going to show you how we can make them super easy and foolproof. Just stay tuned. So we're going to have that coming up a little bit later. But first, wanted to welcome you all. I hope that wherever you are staying warm and that it's not too snowy or cold where you're at. But thanks for joining us tonight. So I'm just going to jump right into it because this fabric line, there's just so much to like about it. And it brings a couple of things to the forefront. I mentioned the curves that you'll see in the quilt behind me and how easy and approachable they are. But this is a fabric line like no other that we've seen in the shop recently. This is called Wishflower by Rachel Rossi, and she designs for OEKO-TEX. This fabric, first of all, let me tell you the story about the fabric. It's really such an adorable story that Wishflower is all about weeds, things that people traditionally think of weeds and how they can be beautiful. So in the comments, you'll have to let me know, are you team dandelion is a flower or team dandelion is a weed? Do you spray it and pull it, or do you think it's beautiful in its, I guess, in its story? And that's kind of where the wish flower comes from, is from dandelions, that her daughter, I believe it was, would pick a dandelion and blow it and make a wish, which is what you do when you see a dandelion. And so this whole line is called wish flower, but it's not just dandelions. It's all things that are considered weeds and how beautiful that they can become. Um, this I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual fabric because I don't feel like we talk about the actual fabric very often. This is all made from unbleached cotton, and there's a couple of things about that I want to make sure that you guys know about. First of all, and we can go to the overhead here and I'll show you this fabric. Here's a close up. There's about 29 pieces in this particular collection, and you'll definitely see a theme here. But this is the main dandelion when it's all puffed up and ready to make that wish. This is where that comes from. This entire line is made from unbleached cotton, and that does a couple of things. One, I think the first reason that it was made this way is to give a more better for the environment feel. If you're not bleaching the cotton, all of those chemicals aren't going into the waterways. But what it has is a kind of secondary effect, and that is that the hand of this fabric is so very lovely. It's got a silky feel to it, but it's got the, I guess, the substantialness of a quilting cotton, but it really is so soft and lovely to the touch. Now, this is one of the main prints that you'll see here. And so when we're looking at the size, the scale of this, the dandelions here are about 6 inches from tip to tail on the repeat here. So that's what you're looking at. One dandelion is about 6 inches. And you better believe that this print makes for a fabulous, a great border, just the way that looks, the geometric nature of it, not quite geographic, geometric. So there are a couple of different colors. You probably noticed them in the quilt behind. And so you are going to see a light, medium, and dark, which is the third thing I wanted to mention about this fabric here. So we talked about dandelions. This one is called Trillium, and this is also a weed, not a weed that I was familiar with, but this is, when we're looking at the purple colorway, this is going to be a light one. And then here are some more seed pods floating. This is going to be the medium there. and this is called Dandy. This is going to be the dark here. So you just saw in the purple colorway, there was a light, medium, dark. The other thing that I wanted to point out about this is you can really tell that the designer, Rachel Rossi, is a quilter because of a couple of different things. One, the light, medium, dark that we just went through, but the other one is the scale of this print. Or the scale of this line rather. We've got some really big, bold prints like this one, another very geometric one, and just look at the texture and the color of that unbleached cotton peeking through. And then also, so we've got some light prints, or they make a really great background or a place for your eye to rest here. And then we've got, I guess, somewhere in the medium range as far as both scale and color goes. And then we've got just a little all over dandy print here. So that was the blue colorway, and you'll notice that the rest of these are pretty familiar. I'll just kind of whip through these fairly quickly. But it really is just a beautiful color story. The colors are absolutely lovely. And like I say, I just can't get over the scale here. And so here's another all over print, great for border, great for a backing as well. And then we're back to some dandelions. Oops, I was trying to pull too many here. The green here is just absolutely luscious, just a really fun, vibrant green, getting us all ready for springtime. And then here we are into the oranges with those dandelions. And I can't emphasize enough just how nice this fabric feels. It's really lovely to work with. And then we've got one more colorway here. This one, we've seen this print a couple of times, but it's called Broomflower. Not a weed I had heard of, but a weed nonetheless. So you'll have to let me know. Is there broomflower in your neck of the woods? Do any of these look realistic on what you might see on the side of the road or in your yard, wherever the weeds might congregate? And then here we are. This fabric is also the perfect opportunity to talk about a certification that you might have seen on some fabrics. Oops, I'm backwards here. We'll turn this around. And that is the OEKO-TEX. And you'll see right here in the very bottom, the OEKO-TEX certification. Now, not all fabric is OEKO-TEX 100 certified, but we do see a lot of it. This particular line is because it is, really important to the designer. Certain art gallery fabrics are OEKO-TEX certified. I've seen it in a lot of different designers, but not every single quilting cotton is certified. So you might ask, what is that certification? The OEKO-TEX certification was originally 100 chemicals, pesticides, harmful things that they tested for. Now it's over 1,000. And what it is, it's a certification so that you can be sure that the finished product, your finished fabric product that you get into your home is safe to be next to you, next to your skin, and safe to use all the time. And so, like I said, what that does is it tests for 1,000 different chemicals, formaldehyde, different harmful chemicals in the making of the process. Now, this, I do want to contrast that against an organic cotton, which is really focused on how the fabric or how the cotton is grown, that it's grown organically. The OEKO-TEX certification makes sure that the finished product from the cotton to the milling to the printing, all of those pieces are safe. A lot of what we see, if we see quilting cotton, out in the shop and it's OEKO-TEX 100 certified, there are different levels to that. And what we generally see is level 1, which is the safest. Basically, I don't think it's a joke. I think this is really what they test for is it so safe a baby could chew on it? And that's OEKO-TEX 1 certification. A lot of what we see, a lot of the art gallery, this particular line is OEKO-TEX level 1 certification. So a baby baby, I think it's up to 3 years, could in fact chew on this and not cause any harm. So hopefully that isn't something that you necessarily need to test for or to make sure that it's safe for, but you know that if a baby could put it in their mouth, it's definitely safe for us as quilters to work with it. You just think of how much fabric you're handling on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and what chemicals, what pesticides, what formaldehyde, what treatments that might have in it. It just makes it puts our mind at ease, I suppose, that what we're working with day in and day out really is safe. So there, like I said, there's so many things to like about this particular line. The designer did design the quilt behind me, and we do have a quilt kit that goes together. It's a boxed kit that includes all of the fabric that you need. So if you are interested in shopping the Wishflower collection, I'll put that QR code up there so that you can scan that. It'll bring you right to our website. Also, the link is going to be in the description if that's easier for you to get to than the QR code. So that's going to bring you to all of the fabric that we just looked at, all of the pre-cuts. There's one bit of this fabric that I forgot to show you. It's not something that we cut, but there are 3 ombres that go along with this as well. So if you are thinking, boy, I would love to make that quilt, but I don't know what I'd choose for a backing, do consider one of these gorgeous ombres. Now these ones, there's 3 different colors. This one is the teal and the green, so it brings back that beautiful teal and that vibrant green. So this was one side of it, and then you flip it over, and it continues with the green in the middle all the way down to a darker green at the selvage. So the 2 selvages are going to be this green, and then we'll flip it over, that teal. So it makes a lovely backing option. And like I say, there's 3 different ombres that go along with this collection as well. So with the quilt kit behind me, you get, oh my goodness, it's a little bit heavy to be lifting up with just one hand. It's going to make a quilt that's finished size 60 inches by 60 inches. Another thing that you could do is, do you remember those dandelion fabrics that I showed you before? They make a fabulous, gorgeous border. Optional, but if you're looking at adding some fabric to make a border around this, check out the listing on our website. There's some information about how much extra fabric you might want to consider if you wanted to add a border, but it's really just adorable as it is there. In the kit, you are going to get all of the fabric that you need for the topping. You'll get the extra fabric to make kind of a scrappy binding to bring all of those colors into the binding. And you'll get the pattern. The pattern is included in this kit. Another thing that's a little bit unique to this one is you'll get a piece of template plastic. There are some curves. You can see the leaves there make the curves. And so you'll need a little piece of template plastic. Mine's all cut up, but you'll get a rectangle sufficient enough to make this. Now, I know what some of you are saying. I don't do curves. I don't want to do curves. I can't do curves. But look at that beautiful quilt. Think of all of the different things that are very cool with curves. And I promise you, they are very approachable and very easy. We went through and made a couple of blocks just to show you how easy it can be. So I'm just going to segue right into that, and we'll go through all the way from templates, some tricks for your templates, all the way to cutting and sewing your curves.
So this pattern is relatively easy in that it just has 2 pieces that need to be cut out using templates. So the first thing, if you are printing this or any pattern that requires templates, is you want to make sure that you're printing it at 100% scale. And an easy way to do that is there'll be some kind of a marker on the pattern showing you that you should have 1 inch or 4 inch depending on the pattern. And so after printing, what I'm going to do is just take my ruler and make sure that the block that says 1 inch actually is 1 inch. And so once that's tested, now I can cut my templates. So these both have a right angle, and I'm going to use that to save how much I have to cut. I'm going to take my template plastic. Now this template plastic you can see is a little opaque. I've got one side that's very smooth and one side that's kind of rough. And so I'm going to put this with the rough side down, and that'll help give me some gription so that the template doesn't move. Now I'm going to use this right corner here and line that up to the right corner that's in my template plastic, so that way I have less that I'll have to cut out. Anytime you have straight edges, it's a great idea to use a ruler to help make sure that those are really straight. And then I could also use a piece of tape and tape this down, but this is a relatively easy template. So I am just going to use my ruler and mark this side, and I'm going to use, line that back up. I probably should have used a little piece of tape there. And then I'm going to use my ruler and mark this side. And then I am going to just slowly go around and draw the curved edge here. Now you could use a different color to help, but I can kind of see where my line is, and sometimes nice short strokes do the trick. Now you could also use cardboard, like a cereal box weight cardboard, and glue the template onto that cardboard and then cut it out. You'll want to use either rubber cement or sometimes a glue stick works better than glue out of the bottle. Glue out of the bottle is just a little bit too wet, and sometimes it'll cause your template to pucker. So do try rubber cement or just a very dry glue stick to get that so that your template doesn't pucker. But you could glue that down and then cut your pieces out. But I like the template plastic, that gives me a little bit more rigidity. So you can see here, I now have my right corner here and my curved template. In the pattern, she calls this the crust piece, so that's the outside of your circle, all ready to be cut out. Now I'm not going to use my fabric scissors for this. I'm just going to use regular sharp household scissors to cut this piece out. And then I would do the same thing for the other piece. I'm going to find another right corner. Let's do this one here. Line that up and then trace around just like I did for the first one and cut both of those out. So now we have our templates cut out. We've got the filling and we've got the crust piece, and we just have to match it up with our fabric. For this one, all of the filling pieces are going to be exactly the same. So I'm just going to line my template up, and for this particular one, the pieces that I need, the right angles here are exactly the size that I cut these pieces. Now in the pattern, I believe she says just cut your strips and then cut these out. These I thought would be just a little bit easier if I had squares and then cut from the squares. So I'm going to take my pen, and this is going to be cut off. So I'm going to go ahead and use a friction pen here and just trace around the template. That template plastic gives me a nice lip to hold on to. And for this, if you remember, there is a smooth side and a grippy side. I'm using the grippy side down to the fabric. And you can see it's pretty light here, but I've got my pen mark here. I'm just going to stack up all my pieces and cut them to have the same curve. And I'm going to use that with, cut it with a scissors as opposed to using a rotary. This template plastic isn't thick enough to make me feel comfortable about using that next to a rotary cutter, and it's just as easy to use my fabric scissors to cut that little curve. The crust piece is kind of interesting. So to get that leaf effect, you need to have your pieces oriented the right way. And so this was easy as well, cut down to the squares as noted in the pattern. So then I'm just going to follow the pattern instructions and again put the grippy side down to the fabric, line it up, and then I'm going to use my pen to mark where I need to cut for the crust piece. And I'm just going to make sure I get this darker purple really good so I can see that when I'm cutting. So here, it's really light on the camera here, but I can see it good enough to cut. I'm just going to cut around that with my fabric scissors. And then I'll have my pieces and I'll be ready to take it to the sewing machine and sew these together. So before we head over to the sewing machine, I'm gonna stop at the pressing station and do one quick thing. Now, this is a really easy way to sew curves without using any pins or glue. Use whatever method works for you, but I think this is a really easy one to make sure that everything lays nice and flat and that we have basically a registration mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the crust piece and I'm going to fold that wrong sides together, and I'm going to line it up nice and even. I'm going to make sure that this top piece is lined up, and I'm going to make sure that the ends are lined up so I can get the exact middle of that. And I'm going to go ahead and press that so I have a nice crease. I'm going to do the same thing for the filling piece, except for I'm going to do that right sides together. So I'll line that up, get it good and lined up, make sure that everything is even, and it looks like it goes all the way down to the point. I can adjust that in a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and just press the whole thing. So now what I have is a crease in the middle and a crease in the middle. When I put these together, I can use that crease that goes all the way down to line up my piece so I know it's exactly even. Now, with that done, without any pinning or gluing, I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how we put them together. Now we're ready to sew. For this one, I like the method of putting the crust down first. And you'll see in a second that it's a lot easier to stretch this and make it more or less straight as you're feeding it through the sewing machine, and use the filling piece to kind of guide the curve around. So I'll start by showing that first. What I'm going to do is take my pieces and I'm just going to put a little pin in this one. I'm going to line up my crust and my filling just so it's exactly straight in this corner here. So I'm going to flip that over, line it up again, and put a pin in it. And this is only so that I can keep this together and get it to my sewing machine. So kind of adjust that there, get my pin in, and now I'm ready to go. I'll also point out that I have a little bit of, this is seam guide tape. You can also use like a stack of painter's tape or a stack of washi tape, and this just helps me keep that 1/4 inch as I'm going in, and you can see I'm straightening the bottom piece against that. So let me put my presser foot down. I'm going to start a couple of stitches, and before I go too much further, I'll back her up. So now I don't need this pin anymore. I can take this out. The other thing that it would be helpful, a helpful setting on your sewing machine, is to make sure that your needle down stays in position. Occasionally, especially if you have a larger or a very tight curve, you might have to lift your presser foot up to let out some of the ease. Having your needle down keeps everything in place. So then what I'm going to do is straighten my crust piece and just follow the curve of my filling. So you can see here I've got that, and as this goes across, I'm just curving that filling piece to go right on top of it. Now the name of the game here is just to take your time and go a little bit slow. You can see I'm not pedal to the metal here. But this is, I'm showing it to you in real time. Now, one extra little layer here is that for the background piece, I do have that seam there. So as I get closer, I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance there is pressed down. So I've got that straight, and I'm also kind of cupping the top. You can see how the back lifts up a little bit.
I'm just using my fingers to keep the pieces exactly where I want them. And that's all there is with curves. I'm almost up to that seam allowance here. And I'm just using that cupping of the fabric to help me lay down the filling piece nice and flat. Okay, so I made it through the seam allowance. That's pretty good. The other thing that I checked with my fingers is, remember those creases that we made? I wanted to make sure that those were nice and lined up. If you do it this way though, try not to stretch the bottom too much. You shouldn't have too much trouble with that. So here we've got just the end of it. You could use at this point, and I'd highly recommend it, a stiletto or a little tweezers to help, because now there's just going to be this little bit that's going under the sewing machine, and I don't want my fingers too close, so I'm going to use that stiletto to help hold it down. And we're close enough to the edge that you know, it's not too much to hold those together. And I'll use that, back it up, and finish her off. And with that, I have a beautiful curve. Now all I have to do is take this to the ironing board and press it out. And after just a little bit of pressing, you can see, we'll zoom out just a little bit here, I have a nice beautiful curve with no puckers. Pretty cool. Now, if you do, before you take it to the ironing board, if you do have a little pucker or two, those really easily press out. You can use just a little bit of water to help those relax a little bit. But here is the first curve. And I would follow the rest of them in this exact same manner. Let me get another piece and I'll show you what it might look like if we did it the reverse, if we showed the crust on top and the filling on the bottom. So here I've got my pieces. I've got the filling piece folded and creased, and my crust piece folded and creased. Now, some people do like to have the larger piece on the bottom, and that's going to behave in a very similar manner. I'm going to start out the same way, in that I'm going to take a pin just until I get it to my sewing machine. It's so much easier to line up here than it is at the machine. Oops, I lost my pin. Okay, let's try that again. I've got my pin. I'll line that up nice and neat and bring it over to the sewing machine. Now here I'm going to start it in essentially the exact same way. We'll get a couple stitches in. And then I'm going to lose that pin. And then now I'm just going to guide that piece around. And as I mentioned before, on some of these, you might need to lift up your presser foot and give it a little bit of ease. But all I'm doing is roughly the same. I'm taking my crust piece and guiding it around the circle. And then what I'm trying to do is, when I see some of these wrinkles or these puckers, just make sure that the seam allowance is smooth, but that those puckers stay behind. Here's right about where I would make sure that my creases are lined up, and it looks like I am exactly on. If I had to make any adjustments, I would do it here, but it looks like I'm pretty darn close. And here we're coming to the seam allowance, and These always get a little bit tricky when you have just the tiniest bit of fabric. These edges, that's probably, I think, the part that I find the most treacherous here is when there's not more. If you've got like the main corner part of the curve there, it seems like just that more fabric is easier to work with. But when you've got just little bits here, but I will say this seam guide definitely does help out. And same as before, I'm going to use my stiletto to help guide that in. I think a tweezers would be really helpful here too, especially with a teeny tiny little edge like that. So I'll do that and guide it in. And there we go. Had a little bit of a slip there, but generally I think that's going to be small enough where it's in my seam allowance and it will not matter. So here I've got my crust and looking and feeling the same way. No major bumps or puckers. So let's take it to the ironing board. So here I've got the piece that I just sewed with the crust side up. I will say that this one was so much easier to make sure that my center was lined up, but as you can see, I lost a little bit of that tail there when it went through the machine, and I felt just a little bit harder to control those puckers having this side. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, right? Easier to line up, but especially on the smaller edges, just a little bit harder to control the top piece when it was on top. Here is the piece that I sewed with the crust side down and the filling side up. This one was a lot easier to get through the machine, a little bit harder to match up those center points because the crust piece was fully covered by the filling piece, but it was just a little bit easier when I could control this, make this piece straight and have the filling piece roll around it. So it really just depends. I think if the crust piece was big and sizable, having that crust piece on top is a little bit more advantageous. That's when I would use that. For something like this, where that crust piece is really very tiny, I just have little bits on the edge, I found that having the filling on top was a little bit easier, that crust on the bottom, so I could straighten it out. And so that is the easy way to end up with a bunch of lovely curve pieces. Now, if you are a big fan of sewing curves, you'll have to let me know. Are you team crust on top or crust on the bottom? And I will say, like a huge thank you to Rachel Rossi for bringing that crust filling terminology. You've heard of convex and concave, or like hill and valley, I think is what I've seen also. But the crust and filling, boy, that's going to stick with me because who's not familiar with pie, right? Who doesn't know the crust versus the filling? So I am more team crust on the bottom. I just find it a little bit easier to work with, especially with little edges there. But like I say, it's the right technique for the right job. I can see where both would be used and be helpful. So that really is how quickly you can get through a bunch of curves. A lot of it took so long because I was talking, and sometimes when you're talking, it takes a little bit longer. But yeah, it's a great quilt, a beautiful way to add a little bit of curves for a lot of impact here. Another piece that wasn't necessarily mentioned, it didn't, you could see that I didn't necessarily need it, but if you are having trouble with curves, you could consider shortening your stitch length just slightly, and that will help make a nice curvy curve for you. So with that, that brings us to the end of the Wishflower and the curves. I hope that you walked away with some a new understanding and appreciation for curves, or what goes into making fabric and what goes into making fabric healthy and safe for you. With that, I'll get on to our housekeeping items. Tomorrow on Wednesday, we have Engineer Your Quilts. It's our February thread talk with Karen Boland. Very excited to see this particular thread talk and hear Karen speak. She came very highly recommended, so a very Very special thank you to you, Kim, for bringing her to our attention. Very much looking forward to that. So you can still register for that thread talk. Again, that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday, at 8 p.m. Eastern. So do register before that closes. We usually close it about an hour before. We're also gearing up for our next session of Stitch Lab. That's going to be in a couple of weeks, but the little fabric gifty is going out this week. So do be sure, if you had Stitch Lab on your mind and you want to make it for this month's prize, go ahead and sign up for that. Stitch Lab is just a great kind of a quilty guild, or actually more of a stitchy guild, where we have a challenge each month and bring our own take to that. It's a great community, filled with people who are very supportive, and just a lovely environment and a great way to break out of your comfort. And the last thing is, I will mention that we are still accepting signups for our collage quilting virtual retreat. That is going to start March 30th. It's March 30th. I'm sorry, March 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It's the entire weekend. You are free to drop in and join us for as much as you want, but it is a great way. There's some educational pieces there. You'll have access to those indefinitely, and you'll get a little retreat package too. Really fun. We are in the shop here working on all kinds of fun collage quilting things. We're doing a cupcake of the month. So this is our kit for February. You'll be able to pick that kit up if you care to. Just click on this collage quilting virtual retreat QR code, or click the link in the description here, and that'll bring you to all of our collage quilting. We also have, this was our OG original cupcake collage quilt. Each of these little mini collage kits make 4 of these. So you can cut them apart, or you can keep them all together and have kind of like an Andy Warhol pop art moment. This one is Fifi. This is the special kit of February. This is Fifi and Posh. And so collage quilting is really a lot of fun. In the kits, you get all that you need to complete this. You'll get the fabric for both the background and the backing, binding, all of the different pieces that you need to make Fifi. And most of them do include the pattern. I will say that the Cupcake of the Month kit does not include the pattern, because you only need to get that pattern once. But a lot of people get each month's cupcake. But our friend Fifi here, I just wanted to make sure she was the right way. Fifi does come with the pattern. It's just such a fun, great project, the collage quilting, and a great way to use up like fabric scraps, because you can see you don't use a whole ton of fabric except for the background and maybe the binding. But we would love to see you for the collage quilting virtual retreat. Feel free to work on one of the little projects or bring your own. It's a great time. A great weekend as well. So with that brings us to the end of Live with Gotham Quilts. We really hope to see you next week, same bat time, same bat channel. And be sure to let us know in the comments. Are you now ready to try some curves? Are you pretty excited about that? There are a number of different ways to make curves too. This was one of them with templates, but stay tuned, because we do have other projects that might make you love curves even more and get you on the curve bandwagon. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Hope to see you tomorrow for our Thread Talks with Karen Mullen. Otherwise, we'll see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. That's 6:30 Eastern. Each Tuesday we come to you. So thanks, and we'll see you then.